Hi there. Here's what's going on in the world today. Here's a nice photo of a rabbit with his eyes sticking out between some leaves at us. This was taken today by Flickr user Ben and Larry. Remember the hit Netflix show Squid Game? The one where contestants had to complete a bunch of challenges to make money and not die? Well, Netflix is now making a reality television version of it called Squid Game: The Challenge. It'll be very similar to the real show, where people will be competing for $4.5 million in prize money, but I don't think anyone will die this time. The show is actually looking for real contestants right now, and so if you're interested, you can go to squidgamecasting.com and fill out the form for one of the versions of the show in order to potentially be one of the 456 people that will be on the show competing for the $4.5 million. So if you're interested in the show, check that out, squidgamecasting.com. The war in Ukraine continues to get worse and worse, as now a third U.S. military veteran has gone missing in Ukraine. Grady Kurpasi has been a Marine for 20 years and retired from the Marines in November of 2021. However, when he heard about the war breaking out in Ukraine, he volunteered to come and help the civilians in Ukraine. However, at some point it looks like the battle found him, and it seems as though he was captured and may now be a prisoner of war to the Russians. So we're all hoping that Grady Kurpasi will make it home as soon as possible, unharmed, and we hope that the war in Ukraine ends soon, as it's causing a huge number of problems all over the world. This gigantic whale decided to stop by a harbor where some people were waiting on the docks to say hello. This woman down here decides to try to touch him as he swims by her. Misses the first time, but then, just as he's leaving, manages to touch his tail. Big news in the world of wrestling. Vince McMahon, who's owned the World Wrestling Entertainment Organization since 1980, is stepping down because of misconduct allegations, and his daughter Stephanie is now the CEO. Stephanie is, of course, married to Triple H, another executive in the organization, and very famous wrestler. Apparently, he's being accused of giving hush money to certain women that worked for him, including one $3 million payment. And so he says he's going to cooperate with the investigation and agree with whatever they decide to do to him afterwards. And so I think it's pretty safe to say that Vince McMahon's goose is cooked. He was cheating on his wife, and him and another guy that works there were doing this for years and decades, and they've finally been caught 5 years after the Me Too thing has happened. And so we'll see what happens with that, but I think it's safe to say that the Vince McMahon era of WWE is over. A couple of days ago, some workers at SpaceX have put out a letter to everybody at the company, basically saying that Elon Musk is an embarrassment to the company and causes them lost sales, problems, difficulty with making deals, and just in general work instability. And so they're saying that he's a wild card, a maverick, and basically doesn't take his job seriously, goofs around too much, when in actuality he runs one of the most important companies in the world that's responsible for putting, equipment in outer space for the US government. And I kind of agree. Elon Musk has been on the Joe Rogan show smoking pot and has no problem fighting with anybody and making 420-69 jokes all over his Twitter. He's not a serious businessman. He's basically a man-child that owns companies because he's super rich and it seems doesn't have much better to do with his life. And so he responded to this letter by actually firing at least 5 people that wrote the letter and spread it around. So, word of advice, if you work for a company that is owned by Elon Musk, don't say anything bad about Elon Musk. Of course, this is inappropriate, and people should be able to say anything that they want about their boss as long as it's legal, including criticism that might help him to improve, to make the company more profitable, and to achieve more, and to make the people that work there happier. Elon Musk does not feel this way. He thinks that it's his way or the highway. You're little people, he's big people, and you have to play by his rules. So we'll see how this works out for Elon in the long run, but we'll see. Julian Assange is a guy that used to run a website which was called WikiLeaks. And WikiLeaks is very famous for taking secret government forms and making them public. He's also very famous for collaborating with Edward Snowden, who used to work for the NSA that released a lot of information for Assange to release to the public that basically said that the United States government spies on everything that you do. Every phone call that you make, every text that you send, every email that you get, every website that you visit, all of it is stored in databases forever so that it can be maybe used against you one day, or that's the fear. So the US government has been for a long time trying to arrest Julian Assange, and so he's been hiding from the US government to avoid those charges, including at embassies where he can't be reached and a lot of other places, and he's actually been in the United Kingdom for quite a while, trying to avoid getting extradited to the US to get charged. And well, the UK just agreed today to release him to the United States. And so it looks like whether he's actually guilty of anything or not, he will be coming to the US at some point and getting tried. And so there's a lot more to this story, and I'll get to it later, but this is a big news for anybody that cares about privacy or WikiLeaks or government accountability. So we'll keep an eye on this one and see how it turns out, but not good news for Julian Assange, absolutely. Crypto has been going through a big crash recently with a lot of the big names in the space, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all the trillions of others losing huge amounts of money and value since their all-time high. It looks like we're entering what's called a crypto winter, which is basically where people don't have any interest in investing in cryptocurrencies for years, and prices just drop and drop and drop, and anybody that has money in it loses all their money. So let's take a look at the Bitcoin price here. We're going to go a 1 year. You could see that at one point it had an all-time high of about $67,000 or $69,000, and this was back in November of last year. And now we're down to 20,000. So huge amounts of money lost in this space, and it's just in a free fall, an absolute free fall. And so we'll see what happens with Bitcoin as time goes on, but it looks like anybody that has their money in Bitcoin is going to be struggling for many years. And Bitcoin sometimes is a prediction of the overall market in total, and so if Bitcoin is tanking, well, that could be evidence that potentially the entire market is tanking. Big news in the music world. Right now, the #1 song on Billboard is Running Up That Hill, A Deal with God by Kate Bush. And this is interesting because Kate Bush is actually in her 60s, 63 years old, and did a lot of music in the 70s and the 80s. And actually, this song right here, Running Up That Hill, was featured in season 4 of Stranger Things, where millions and millions of people have been streaming it and buying it and listening to it. And so it's interesting today how songs from 30, 40, even 50 years ago can reach #1 due to being featured on media that people are seeing now. You may remember that very famous video of the guy on the skateboard singing along to that Fleetwood Mac song, which then went to #1 and did huge sales for them. And so it's interesting how everything old is new again. And so I just want to congratulate Kate Bush on having a #1 song. Tragically, there was another shooting in America, this time in Alabama. America has an incredible problem with guns and with mass shootings. I think that we live in a society where a lot of meaning is lost and a lot of anger and resentment boils over, and people want to get a little bit of fame to try to get in the news for doing something like this or just spread as much hurt as humanly possible. I'm going to make a commitment on this channel to try to cover as many mass shootings as I can until something is done about it. Things in America need to change desperately, especially when, multiple times a week there are mass shootings where many people die. And so in this case, it was 2 dead, 1 injured in a church, of all things, actually. I don't want to go into who did this, but they do say that the victims have not been named at this time. When they are, I'll do an effort to try to highlight them on this channel. But something needs to be done about the gun violence in the United States and everywhere else in the world. And I just don't think that enough is being done to it. I think that we as Americans sweep it under the rug and never think about it. But we do need to think about it, and we need to be aware of it, and something needs to be done about it. Big news out of China. China has launched its 3rd aircraft carrier, a ship called the Fujian. And what's interesting about this aircraft carrier is not just the incredible size of it, but the fact that this is the first aircraft carrier that's actually been made entirely in China using Chinese materials and labors and everything like that, as opposed to sourcing things from other countries. And so this will be a very big deal for the Chinese military. However, This also could be potentially a sign that things are ramping up in the South China Sea, as territorial claims in that area have been fought over for many years. It seems that China is making plays to try to establish dominance in that area, and this is definitely a part of that. So it'll remain to be seen what happens with the Fujian in the future. But for now, it is a big accomplishment for the Chinese military. Now, you guys may remember Clay Aiken. He was from either season 1 or possibly season 2 of American Idol a really long time ago, maybe 20-something years ago. Well, Clay Aiken is obviously a fantastic singer, but he's also a politician and ran for office in North Carolina. And in fact, Clay actually lives or used to live in the same city as me, which is Raleigh, North Carolina. And in fact, Clay Aiken has put his house for sale in North Carolina. So we'll take a look at this and just see some of the pictures. Ooh, nice pool table. Wow. Ooh, nice bath. Screened-in porch. Oh my goodness. So Clay Aiken is asking $980,000 for his 3-bed, 3.5-bath home in Raleigh, and it looks to be a pretty great deal. So if you're looking for a nice home with a nice pool, this could be the place for you. And you might even get to meet Clay Aiken. Overwatch was one of the biggest video games in the world in the year 2016. And now, 6 years later, Overwatch 2 is getting closer to being released. And so we had a big article today with the director of Overwatch 2 talking about them going free to play as opposed to charging $60 for Overwatch 2, getting rid of loot boxes, and creating a seasonal roadmap. So I thought this was kind of interesting, this interview, to see how Overwatch 2 is going. They also just released a video, I think yesterday, talking about the Junker Queen, which is a new playable character that we'll have, which is sort of a, spin on Junkrat from the first game. And so it's interesting to see what changes they've been making to Overwatch 2, including having 5 versus 5 players instead of 6 versus 6. It'll remain to be seen if this will actually make people come back to the game and make it as exciting as it was when Overwatch first launched in 2016. We'll see. There's been a lot of shakeups at Blizzard, but I have faith in it, and I'm definitely going to try it when it comes out. I loved Overwatch, played it for many years. Probably haven't played it in about 2 years now, but excited to see what Overwatch 2 has in store. NASA's Perseverance rover spotted a very unusual rock on Mars. It seems to be a little boulder bouncing on top of another boulder. And so a lot of people were asking NASA, is this common for a rock to be balanced like that? And well, the answer is yeah. These are called bouncing rocks, or precariously balanced rocks, or PBR, Pabst Blue Ribbon. And these types of rocks are actually very common everywhere that we have looked. And apparently scientists use these PBRs to be able to measure the intensity of earthquakes or Marsquakes on Mars. So they can look and see if the rock falls off or if it stays, to see how powerful these earthquakes are. In addition to that, part of the material that helped Perseverance to be able to land on Mars has actually ripped apart from its landing zone and been blown by the wind several miles away, where the Perseverance rover found it several months later, lodged between a rock right here, as you can see. And so that's kind of cool, actually, that we've already put trash on Mars. It's a huge day for Final Fantasy VII fans, as yesterday's Final Fantasy VII 25th Anniversary Celebration stream revealed several new games in the universe. The biggest of which is called Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is actually the second chapter in the Final Fantasy VII Remake catalog. So you may remember in 1997, we had the original version of Final Fantasy VII with those blocky graphics. Well, last year, the year before, they finally released a remake of that game on PlayStation 4 and other consoles, and it was a huge, massive hit that everybody loves. And now they finally announced that the second chapter of that game will be called Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. They also showed a really cool video of it, showing Cloud and Sephiroth traveling through the wilderness together, and obviously some footage of Cloud and Zack here, who's important in the story. So very excited to learn more about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth when it comes out, which is Chapter 2 of the remake, and super excited to play that one. In addition to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is the big game that was announced, there were many other games that were announced as well, including Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII Reunion. Now, what's interesting about this is that this is actually a remaster of an older game that was for the PSP, or the PlayStation Portable. So this is a HD remake of Crisis Core, and it will be available for all of the major platforms, including PS5, PS4, Xbox, etc., and even Switch. Another game that was also introduced yesterday was the Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. And so what is that? Well, that's actually the original Final Fantasy VII Remake, now available for PCs. So if you were looking for Final Fantasy VII Remake, it was only available on consoles. Well, now it's available on PC, but that game is called Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. Why is there a different name for the PC version? I have absolutely no idea. The next game that was announced was Final Fantasy VII, The First Soldier, Season 3. And so this is exciting. Final Fantasy VII, The First Soldier is a mobile game that was announced about 2 years ago. And at yesterday's celebration stream, they announced that Season 3 is now underway of that. So if you play Final Fantasy VII, The First Soldier on mobile, Season 3 is available, so check that out. Next, we have Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis. Now, Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis is another mobile game. It's a single-player episodic mobile game that actually attempts to recreate the original Final Fantasy VII on mobile. So kind of interesting that we have this really high-quality version of the remake that everybody loves, and then this other version for mobile, which is like a remake. Not sure why we needed this. I haven't played it. I don't know if it's good or not, but it's available now. Not sure why we needed this, but it'll be coming soon. In addition to that, they're also releasing an action figure of Cloud, an alarm clock of the Buster Sword that looks pretty cool, and a ring with the Shinra logo on it right there. That's everything that's happening in the world of Final Fantasy VII right now. So a lot of cool stuff, but for me personally, I'm probably just going to wait for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on the PS5, even though that might take a long time, but all the other stuff looks pretty cool too. All right, everyone, that's going to do it for today. We're going to sign out today with this picture of this very cute little dog whose birthday it is. He just turned 2 years old today, so congratulations, buddy. Happy birthday. Okay, everybody, I'll see you tomorrow when we find out what's going on then. Until then, have a great day.